afternoon, everyone. Welcome to NuPath Live. My name is Dan Harris. I'm your host. We've got a very special episode for you today. You are going to hear from one of our board members that is going to be interesting, I promise. One of our board members you maybe haven't seen before or you may not know of as well. And we actually had to record this yesterday due to her schedule, but I promise you it's going to be interesting. Her name is Kristen Brandt, and Greg and I first met Kristen in 2014, June 2014. She worked for Select Energy. This is the group that put the solar panels, 299 of them on our roof. And Kristen was this marketing guru. She was the marketing director, and we really leaned on her heavily at the beginning. And I made the decision, just a very new CEO at the time, to ask her to join the board, which she did. And she's been a member ever since. Now, the reason you may not know of her is that you haven't seen, she hasn't had as much of a presence, but there's a reason for that. When we met Kristen, all those many years ago, she was single. I think she was engaged, but then in the past few years, she got married to her fiance. They had a little boy, Wyatt, and a little girl. Oh, they bought a house. I forgot to mention that. Their little boy, Wyatt, was born, and their little girl, Ellie, was born. And now that everything's kind of cooled off for her, I mean, it's going to be a crazy life for sure. But she said she's got more time for us, and it's perfect timing because now Kristen is working for a group called Catalyze. Everything she's doing has to do with sustainability. Well, I'm not going to say too much more about it because you're going to hear about some of it in our interview with her. And this is some of the stuff that we're going to be thinking about organizational sustainability in this next year and going forward. It's very exciting, and I think you'll enjoy this. Second half of the interview, I'm going to get her to talk about her. You're not going to believe I'm saying this, vaccine hesitancy. She got the vaccine, but she had some different ways of looking at it that she told me about some time ago, and I wanted her to. We had a little talk about that, so I think you'll find it interesting. I'll come back at the end before we wrap up. Enjoy this. I think you'll find it's great. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome to NuPath Live. Now
Thanks for having me.
this is the part where you say long time listener, first time caller, or something like that. You've been on our board for a long time. In the introduction, which I will do tomorrow on NuPath Live, because we're recording this on Wednesday, the day before NuPath Live, because of your busy schedule. I'm going to talk a little bit about, the connection between how we met with Select Energy. They put the panels on top of our roof, and but you were the first board member I ever chose as a new CEO, and so you've always been just a little extra special to me because of that fact. Yeah. Do you remember what it was like when I asked you if you would be on our board? Were you surprised?
I was very surprised, of course, but I felt the immediate connection. So I was hoping that we would at least stay in touch somehow, and I'm glad that this is how it's manifested.
And you had you were in the middle of living your life. You were getting married when you joined our board. Then you bought a house. Then you had two little ones, and now that they're getting a little bit bigger, certainly not grown up by any means, you are able to do a little bit more with the board. And I'm so excited about this. And I wanted to make sure I introduce you to the rest of the NuPath, the NuPath members, the NuPath followers, the NuPath family. So you work in sustainable energy. You've worked around in ESG marketing, and so you've got a special love of environmental impact and green energy and all the rest. And you and I had a conversation not that long ago because I become much more of an environmentalist all of a sudden, just with some of the things that have been happening. I feel like I'm talking a lot. That's what I want to set this up, but I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your experience in your past. But when we were talking, it became suddenly so evident to me of how you are here with us now at the right time, right place, and with a message and with expertise that we can really benefit from, because NuPath has been exploring more and more about how we're doing our part to be good citizens of the world, good stewards of the planet. Talk to us a little bit about what you do and so how some of this crossover will be beneficial to NuPath.
Sure. So, thank you. That was a wonderful setup. So what I do is I lead our environmental, social, and governance, or ESG efforts, along with our marketing efforts at Catalyze. And Catalyze is a renewable energy developer. So I have been in the renewable space and even environmental space for over a decade, and actually studied in sustainable development. So it's always been something, thinking about overall sustainability and, not just people's impact on the environment, society, and then also financial viability, but organizations' impact and role in that. And so that's something that I've really dedicated both my academic and professional careers to, and really followed that, and find myself able to contribute to NuPath in that way, on the sustainability committee. And so NuPath, in my eyes, has always been on the forefront of so many different issues, and very innovative, especially given the industry that you're in. And so when you came to me, and even years ago when we first met, when I was at Select and they being the provider, working with NuPath to put solar energy, that was even forward thinking, especially in those in those days, which was not
Yeah.
so. But I guess my point is, I think that you've and your team there have always been thinking about improvement and sort of initiatives that maybe other nonprofits, especially in the space, aren't thinking of. And so I'm excited to join the sustainability committee and really work with your team to help make NuPath a better corporate, or not even corporate, but just better citizen, right? Better citizen within the community. And that goes to your impact on the environment, and how you look at other ways to lessen that impact, how your impact is on your community, the people, the men and women that you support every day, your workers, and the communities that you operate in. And then, of course, the financial viability and stability of the organization, which makes the work that you do possible, right? Because these three things have to work in tandem and in balance. And really, ultimately, it's going to be, a great added value to the organization over the long run, and just continual improvement.
It was funny when you said back in those days, talking
Yeah.
about 10 years ago, but I think that's sort of indicative of what we're beginning to see, and why all of a sudden I went from being like a mid-level, I recycle, I don't litter, I use unleaded gas, whatever, that I care about the environment, going from that to like suddenly with the climate change and with the natural disasters, the flooding in New Jersey and New York, people being drowned in their basement apartments, all of a sudden I'm thinking about, it's time I should get a new car. I've got over 100,000 miles on my car. And all of a sudden I thought, I don't want to buy another fossil fuel vehicle. The next car I get, I want to be an EV, electric vehicle, because things are changing so rapidly. And I think we've seen such a shift even in the past 5 to 10 years in, the attitudes and outlooks and the understanding of that we as a planet, we as a people need to figure out how to minimize the damage that we've already done. And so when you mentioned the sustainability committee, something that's come from this has been, you're informing me as the CEO of this organization, taking me from being this sort of casual bystander when it comes to environmental kinds of issues and causes, and feeling like, how do I use my position? How do I use this organization to make decisions that are going to inform a better and a healthier and a more sustainable, path forward, and taking that much more seriously and thinking about what kinds of things can we do for our employees to incent them to, use, renewable energy? If they got solar panels, if they're driving an EV, can we get a charging station here in the lot? And these sorts of things that would fall under the organizational sustainability factors. So there's a lot we just don't understand, as that I don't understand as an organization. I'm sure there's a lot of people that work for NuPath that maybe feel the same way. Yeah, I don't know if there's a question there, but I wonder what your experience has been like with people like me that kind of are just uninformed, generally, or they just haven't caught the bug, how do you you know, encourage them to take more of a active, role in shaping our future and destiny, as a member of this citizen of this planet.
Sure. Well, I think everyone has, regardless of what the issue is, we all have things that are closer to our interests and our values, and may not be, say environmentalism or sustainability. It just may not be at the forefront of people's minds. And I think that certainly over the last decade, and even over the last, I would say even the last year, there have been so many, social issues and environmental issues brought to the forefront, to the masses, that it's no longer something people can ignore. And so even if it's not something that people are ready to kind of put their efforts towards, I think a lot of companies are doing that, listening to stakeholder demand, listening to what people want, and actually, meeting people so that you're making it convenient, and they're providing more choices. I mean, the truth is, without getting too deep into this, is that companies have a responsibility. Large companies have a lot of power. And so when you see large companies driving this effort, I think that's where, you see the capital markets getting behind this. That's when there's going to be change, and when it can be easy and convenient and affordable to everyone to make these choices. Whereas maybe in the past it was seen as almost a luxury to have certain, sustainable aspects, or purchase goods that, were in line with certain environmental or social sustainable values. So I think more and more it's becoming accessible and readily available. And now it's something we can't ignore. There's no debate over climate change. I think we're well past our warning signs, and now it's really up to everyone to do what they can to, not only on the climate side, but also on the social side, right? We've had an awakening, and that's something that, many people have been in tune to, and now I think there's a lot of others that are catching up.
Mm-hmm. And some of our diversity initiatives are consistent with those ideals. How we treat our staff, how we engage with our community. This is all about preserving and enhancing, the living standards and the life of everybody, isn't it? That we're doing our part to make sure everybody's in a healthy position, however that may be. This may be a question you don't have an answer to, but if I'm thinking about buying an EV, are there rebates you think that are going to be made available through some of these federal programs? That isn't that how it works? When the government can use as a carrot, they can offer rebates. In fact, I think when we engaged with Select, there was programs that made it so that we were able to afford getting the solar panels. I don't remember the specifics. I know it was a power purchase agreement, but do you know anything about that, or what people are talking about, or if somebody's interested in EV, when would be a good time to buy it?
I do. I know briefly on the consumer side, there are rebates. I think at the state level, there's absolutely rebates. I think, don't quote me on this,
Yeah.
even though it'll be recorded. But take a look at the state incentives. I know you get up to $5,000 rebate, I think it is, for an electric vehicle or a vehicle that is energy efficient. And certainly on the infrastructure side, there are programs that allow businesses to actually get their, basically get their parking lots EV ready. It's called the EV Ready or Make Ready program through Eversource, and that's actually funded by, I think in part by VW. So I'll have to fact check some of that, but I can send you resources. But no, absolutely, there are state programs. I haven't seen any at the federal level yet on EVs, but certainly at the state level there are. And Massachusetts has been a leader in this space.
Hmm. I think people are hoping that with either one or two of these infrastructure bills that are being, talked about, at the federal level, that we'll see some of that, and now would be a good time to get into that. And like I said, we're looking at our own fleet, which currently is, of fossil fuel vehicles. Can we think about getting some timeline on converting that to EV, to electric? These are things that we're gonna at least start talking about, which is something that we just never really did before, and I don't really hear it being spoken about much in our space, in our industry, in human services. So really glad to have you on board on that committee. Now I want to shift gears. Did you have anything else to say on that?
No.
Now we're gonna shift gears to like the next thing, and this is the thing that's a little bit trickier. Not tricky, but I'm invited. One of the reasons I invited you is because you and I were talking the other day. Actually, it was when we met for lunch, and we were talking about this whole issue of the vaccine. Now I remember when you were able to get your vaccine through NuPath at one of our clinics, being a board member, and that was back in, I think, late January. And when I called you, you were like, "Oh," it took you by surprise, if I remember correctly, and you were like, "I haven't quite made up my mind." Now that was January, and so there was still a lot we didn't know. It was still seem, I mean, it really was new then. It wasn't FDA approved. I mean, it had conditional approval. But you did get the vaccine, and then you and I were talking just a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling you about some of the challenges that we're facing here, where we now have been trying to incent people to get vaccinated for quite a handsome, $1,000 bonus, and now we're trying to figure out what to do next. And you talked to me about your journey to where you had some misgivings, let's say, or you were truly hesitant. That would be a good adjective descriptor for you. And I just sat there spellbound listening to you talk, because I know people out there probably think, "Oh, I'm this hothead about vaccines and everybody's got to get vaccinated and everything." It's a bit more complicated than that. And I feel like you really helped me understand it in a different way. And I just felt like, in the interest of full disclosure, I thought it might be something some of our listeners might be interested in hearing, either to help increase their sensitivity to the people that are unvaccinated, or even to the people that are unvaccinated on the fence and trying to make a decision for themselves. And you said you'd be willing to. So
Sure.
would you tell us your story?
Sure. So let's see. So let's go back to when I first received the phone call. So it was early, soon after vaccines were being, made available. They were made available, and certainly there was talk about them being made available to the general public. And so really, I did come to you with some hesitation. And I think for me, initially, it was lack of information. I think my initial thoughts around the vaccine were, I'm pro-vaccine of all sorts. However, I didn't know if I wanted to be the guinea pig, and that's, I think, you hear that from a lot of people. I'm not so sure anymore, but that was my initial kind of gut reaction. Well, let's wait until a few other people take it. I talked to my healthcare provider. They had vaccines available starting in February as well. And, one of the concerns, I brought this concern up to my doctor, and she, basically said, first of all, you're not a guinea pig. This has been, tried on, humans for the last however many months. There is a whole population of people, once this was approved for emergency use, that have been receiving it and have been closely monitored, on top of the other people who are in those trials. And so that helped to, I think, calm those concerns. But I think I was still having some of those concerns when we first spoke. Just to preface this for the people who may not know me, everyone's different, right? I'm someone who puts a lot of thought, maybe too much thought, into some things. And so I like to do my research. And I think some of the issues now in this day and age of over information and sometimes misinformation, I don't think I was getting anything that I felt like was misinforming me. I believed in the science, but I do have a family member in the medical field who has a different perspective on medicine, and it's somebody whose opinion I trust and I value. And so I also had a perspective from that angle, and one of my thoughts I'll just take you through the thought process that I shared with you that day that we spoke is, our body was built to handle, our body was built to fight disease, and not all diseases. And that's why I think, I'm pro-vaccine for many reasons. But as I became a mother, I see that my children are now getting the chickenpox vaccine. And I've had thoughts around, well, I had chickenpox as a child. I don't think it's going to threaten my child's life. It didn't threaten my life. I certainly don't want them to be uncomfortable. So I had this, as a mother, when I see new vaccines that I know that I didn't need to get when I was a child, that I handled the disease appropriately. That also was part of my thought process, right? Well, like our body is supposed to handle fighting this, but here are the main differences. COVID is not chickenpox. And so this is where, sort of the logical side of me would come back in. There's like the emotional side and then the logical side. And I generally listen to both sides, and I'm a logical person in the end. And so I started thinking, kind of what led me to make the decision to get vaccinated was, one, this is different. Yes, our body is supposed to handle certain things. There are maybe some vaccines that, are not going to be as important to get. But this is different. This is a global pandemic, killing people. And even if I didn't feel like I was in danger of getting severely infected by COVID, I didn't want to give it to my children. I didn't want to give it to other people's children. I didn't want to give it to people who were immunocompromised or anyone else. And so that was part of my decision. Again, I took into consideration that family members, the information, the scholarly articles they sent to me. And in the end, I just decided, look, there's a risk of getting COVID that I don't know. I don't know the risks of getting COVID over the long term, the short term. I don't know what those risks are like for not only me, but the people that I associate with. And I don't know the risks of the vaccine, but to me, the risks of the vaccine, especially as it became rolled out. And one more supporting point was, I think this is what really kind of stuck in my mind, is that they rolled out the vaccine first to all the first responders across the globe. And so, and the immunocompromised. And those were the people that we were, most concerned with protecting, right? The people that are going to help care for us if we get sick. If they were that concerned or had a real concern about the, if there was an issue with the vaccine, which was my major concern, like what if it causes a side effect I don't know about, they wouldn't have given it to, our entire global first line of defense healthcare workers that are now in a position to help everyone else. So I think I just, again, really long process, but now you all have an interview into my psyche. But that's what led me. It just didn't make sense to me why my emotional side of things, I think my logical brain won out, and, I decided to get vaccinated. And I'm glad that, you listened to me, and I appreciate the people who didn't criticize me for even having the hesitancy. Because I think it's important. Everyone needs to process it. It's new. We're all going through this together. But ultimately, I believe in science. I believe in logic. So that was where I stood.
It's and you said to me, thank you, Kristen. I remember partly you told me that you remembered that you never had colds until you got your first flu shot or something. Like
That's how it felt. Yeah.
that you questioned whether or not we were. And we know big pharma, like all kinds of crazy, like sketchy things go on as far as, everybody wants to get rich, and how they're like, you almost wonder if they're inventing something to require medication. But in this case, as you pointed out, the risks of getting this virus are so great, that, that's an unknown that I just don't want to risk, because I mean, you could die from it. And we've seen people that are young and healthy die, and not that I'm young and healthy, but this doesn't seem to have a strict sort of, profile of the person that it always goes after. And so that's, an inconsistent risk, I think, for me. What would you say? Would you feel like you'd have anything to say to the person that's on the fence, like beyond, telling your story, that just, I mean, obviously you think they should probably get it, right? I mean,
I think that, yes, I support people getting the vaccine. So I'll say that everyone has to come to their own decision. But I really do think that I don't see any logical reason to not get the vaccine. I think there's a lot of emotion. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think that can, it can be politicized. And so sometimes I wonder if the reasoning is more about personal choice and freedom of choice, which I can understand that. But if you get past that, I don't think that, if getting the vaccine means you're better protecting yourself and others, I don't personally see the reason not to. I think that people need to make the best choice for themselves. And I would fully support everyone getting the vaccine. So, I'll end it at that. I'm not going to say one way or the other. I mean, I respect choice.
Yeah. Well, it's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. You didn't mention this, and I did say it earlier, but you're going to be joining the executive committee of NuPath's board as clerk, with a track to do more. We're so grateful for your volunteer service. It is volunteer. I know you're busy, but you bring these kinds of skills to us, this kind of wisdom, and it helps us make good decisions, and especially when we think strategically about moving forward and organizational sustainability. I just could not be happier than I am to have you helping guide our way. So thank you. We'll be seeing much more of you, I'm sure, in your new leadership role with the board. So
great. Thanks for having me, and it's an honor to serve on NuPath's board. So I appreciate the invitation, and the invitation to grow with NuPath on the board.
You're so terrific. I love you. Okay, that probably wasn't very professional, but I don't care. You're awesome. I will talk to you later. Thanks so much, Kristen.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, I did that interview with Kristen, but I still enjoyed watching it, and all the different the wisdom that she had for us. Want to just express my thanks to her again for coming on and for serving on the board. I've got a couple last things I want to talk about as a reminder. We are seeing people get the vaccine, the first vaccine. Judy Miskell is calling people. And so we don't know if you're vaccinated or not, you can expect a call every couple of weeks for her to check in so we can find out. I want to say I appreciate the staff that have taken her call. I appreciate the staff that have treated her professionally, that have got right back to her. Judy's doing this on my behalf, and it's very important, from a communications perspective. So, and I'm always so happy when she comes in all cheerful, saying that 6 more people are being added to the list. So those 6 people, and anybody else that's got the vaccine, is fully vaccinated by November 1st, is going to get $1,000. And so if you're on the fence at all, please reconsider, and we want that money to be yours. In order to do that, you'll have to have your first dose of Pfizer by, oh no, I have it backwards, Moderna by October 3rd, first dose of the Pfizer by the 10th, and that's only like 10 days away and 17 days away. So if you still got to talk to your doctor, or you need to, do more research or whatever it is that you need to do, I wanted to talk to Kristen because I wanted to just have a fair and balanced, look at things. It's not going to change our course because it's too important. At the ADP annual meeting on Tuesday, there was a board meeting right after, and I was talking with some of the other 25 board members, colleagues, as to whether or not the other organizations are making the vaccine mandatory for their organizations. And it's still a mixed bag, but one of the CEOs of a very large organization said that she just felt that if she didn't use her influence as a CEO to make this mandatory for the employees that worked for her, that she couldn't live with herself if she thought that a death could have been avoided. Somebody maybe gets it and ends up dying, that could otherwise be saved. So, I mean, there's lots of reasons for us to all get vaccinated. But I assure you, I am a human being, and I still love you. And even if you're not vaccinated, that's your decision, and we'll see where that goes. But anyway, we are just about out of time. I wanted to thank you all for watching, and I forgot to say it, but today happens to be Bruce Springsteen's 72nd birthday. Can you believe that, dude? Is 72. And the song that was playing when you were maybe waiting to join NuPath Live was "Waiting on a Sunny Day." Talking about renewables, baby. We got this. See you next week.